Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And as always, if we have a Canadian on the show, we have to celebrate. So yay for Candy.
Yay!
I'm sorry, Candy, I should have prepared you for that.
That's okay.
My guest today, it's so interesting. We were just talking before getting on the call. My guest today is somebody that I have known for probably 3, maybe 4 years in different podcasting groups and networking events. Never really had a chance to sit down and talk with her until a little bit earlier this year. Turns out we have so much in common. So I want to introduce you to Candy Motzek. She is a business coach for new and aspiring coaches. She's a recovering corporate executive and engineer who really uses her business acumen as well as her passion for personal and professional development to help coaches reach the goals that they have set for themselves as they step out of maybe the corporate world or enter into the world of coaching. And Candy has an amazing podcast. It's called She Coaches Coaches, which I think is the coolest name. And that's a really great place that if you are starting, has some phenomenal information. Candy gives her insight and also has guests on the show. And the reason I thought Candy would be such a good match for the D-Shift is because I hear so many people now talking about having a second income or getting prepared for retirement by planning or getting prepared to move from the corporate world into more of an entrepreneur role. And they see coaching as the way to do that. So we're going to talk about all things coaching, look at some myths, and then look at some ideas if you are interested in this. So Candy, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I've got to say that the reason that you know that I'm Canadian is because I interviewed you for my show. So make sure that you guys come and listen to Mardi's interview on my show as well. And, instead of her being the interviewer, she gets to be the interviewee. You're going to get a different perspective.
It's different which side of the table you're sitting on, isn't it, Candy?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I think this is something we're going to touch on in the importance of some of the myths around coaching. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. So I was a corporate person for years and years. And, it was really interesting and challenging and all of the good things. And I think that this is something that's pretty common. We might have a path in our life that feels really good, and then something changes, and that's okay, right? Like I was quite happy in the corporate arena when I was there and climbing that corporate ladder. And then there came a time where it's just like, it wasn't good anymore. And so to honor that, it's time for a change. So for me, it was time for a change. It was quite a few years ago now, about 10 years ago. And it was like this question of like, well, what's next? And for me, I looked at those base skills that I always had. So no matter what role I was in, I was always the person that sitting in my office, I'd look up and somebody would knock on my door and say, hey, have you got a couple of minutes that we can talk? And so I always fell into that role of, that quiet ear or the private space or the place to vent. And so that was the beginning of the idea that, well, maybe I could be a coach. So time went on, took my coach training, and then I was like, I think I'd like to do this full time. And so I worked my transition plan, and now here I am, full-time coach, and I have been for a lot of years now too.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because I started this about 10 years ago too. So see, there's another parallel in our universe that's kind of spooky because you may not be listening to this close to Halloween, but it's close to Halloween while we're recording this.
Yeah.
So you got started because I'm hearing that you sort of had a natural inclination that was something that people valued that you could do. So this is what I hear from a lot of people. Well, I've had this experience, whether it's divorce or the loss of a spouse or getting their kids out, empty nest stuff, or creating a small business or a large business, whatever it may be. And then they go, yeah, and I'm looking at these coaches and I could just start this company and or this business, and I can just sit around at home. I've got a Zoom hookup and a microphone, and hot damn, I'm ready to go. So let's look at some of the myths around those kind of statements, because they are definitely out there.
Yeah. And there are people that actually do that. And it's, like for me, it's not the best approach. I think the first place that we forget is, coaching is still a relatively new profession, but it's a profession, and so people who are professional coaches, they've taken training. Most of us have the equivalent of about a master's level, like a 1-year master's level program. And we invested our time and our energy and our money and our sort of our mental process to honing a skill. And so just because you have had that life experience is a great idea to get started, but it's not the only thing. You might have that life experience of having a divorce or overcoming some major life challenge, but then you also want to pair it with actual training so you know how to help your client. Being a coach, it's quite the honored and responsible role. So within the coaching call, we hold confidential space. We hold a safe space for people, and we need to know how to support them. It is most definitely not therapy, but people talk about stuff, and it's not up to me to tell them how to live their life. It's up to me to be the coach, which is to support them to find their own inner wisdom and their own path. It's very different than telling people what to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's the difference. I think that's when a lot of people hear coach, they're thinking sports coach, where they get you to run specific drills and they teach you specific skills and they do all that kind of stuff. That is not what professional coaching is. If you're working with a coach that's doing that, they're more in the consultant role, and that's fine. There's sometimes when it's very specific information, like when you're starting a business and somebody says, well, I don't know whether I should do an LLC or a sole proprietorship or a DBA or whatever, where a coach may provide some education around those things, but never makes the decision for the client. Is that the way you go to, Candy?
Exactly. And so that's the place where, you have multiple hats that you're wearing. So sometimes I'm a business mentor, sometimes I'm a business coach, and sometimes I do training. Like I have a skill set around, creating a coaching program that you could offer. Well, I can show you, you don't need to go and learn that from somebody else. But now what do you want to put in that coaching program? That's where you go back to yourself and say, what's the best match for me? So coaches, I think, need to be really conscious about which hat am I wearing. Yeah. Am I wearing the mentor hat? Am I wearing the instructor hat? Or am I wearing the coach hat? And so just to be really conscious, which hat have I got on today?
Right. And to be prepared to deal with the human side of problems. And, depending on what coach training and what area you coach in, you may be required to have other certifications. For instance, I worked for a online behavioral health company, and I was a coach for them. I had to have specific training around suicide prevention and suicide awareness. I had to have, training about specific nutritional things and specific medication regimes. Like those kind of things may come into play as well. Let's talk about some of these other myths that people have. What's another one that you hear, Candy?
Oh, I think that it's going to be easy, that you're just going to decide that you're going to be a coach, and that somehow miraculously all your friends and family are going to go, what? That's great. I love what you're going to do. So first, that often doesn't happen. And then second, they're not going to be sending all their friends and relatives and peers and associates to you because you decided to be a coach. This is a real business. You have to do business development. You have to do marketing. You have to do sales. You've got to do all the things that a regular business would do. It's not a walk in the park.
And I think that's the biggest that's the biggest thing that most coach trainings don't prepare you for that. They'll give you, a couple of hours on this is how to, protect your business. This is what you should be doing. But I mean, most coaches probably spend more than 50% of their time, I'm guessing, marketing, networking, doing outreach, connecting with potential referral partners and all that kind of stuff. And creating content that's going to get them on, get their posts noticed on social media or YouTube or wherever it may be.
Agreed. And so the piece I think that's really interesting here is that coach training schools, now not always, but lots of the great coaching training schools are teaching you the skill of coaching, which is very different than the skill of marketing or the skill of business building. And so it's really common. And I actually had this experience that in my coach training, somebody would put up their hand and say, so, how much could a coach charge? And then you would be quoted some dollar figure per hour, $250 an hour. And so then the person kind of sits back and says, well, if I just coach 10 people at $250 an hour, I could just sit back and I've made almost 10 grand a month. Poof, wipe my hands clean. That sounds like a breeze, right? Not realizing that it takes time to have those clients. It may take time to charge that rate until you've got the experience and the track record to have the demand at that level, and all the business development time. Like you said, the collaborating, the, front of the room speaking, leading workshops, networking events, volunteer time. I was on the board for the ICF, the International Coach Federation, for years. And I did that because I believe in coaching, but it's also part of the profession. Right. You got to give back too, right?
Yeah. So I agree with you. I'm also an ICF member, and I do a lot of the, they'll have different events where they'll have volunteer coaches that will come in and actually do like speed coaching for 25 or 35 minutes with people. And you have to, this is the other one, right? You have to keep working on your skills because coaching trends do change over time. And some of the stuff that the original founders of the coaching movement were doing is no longer valid. I'm not going to say valid because it's still valid, but it's not as trendy as it is now. For a while, here's an example. For a while, every single coach was doing a vision board with their clients. Didn't matter. It didn't matter what type of coaching you were getting, you were going to do a vision board. Now I don't see that so much anymore.
And in fact, that's one of the things that I've got on my website. And I get quite a number of people that come still looking for a vision board, but it's very different depending on the kind of coaching. Now we're looking at things like, what are your values? What are your goals? And sometimes the coach is going to help you on the real practical side of the goals, and the other, it will be more of an aspirational type thing.
Right.
So one of the reasons too that the tools have changed is coaching has been around for about 20 years now. Well, we know a heck of a lot more about psychological activity, psychological safety, and how the brain works. So of course, we're going to evolve to go with that.
Right.
What did you find, like, just thinking back to when you started out, what's the one thing that you were like, oh my gosh, if I had just realized this one thing, it would have made my life so much easier?
When I started my coaching, if I had realized the power of really quality networking and getting referral people that were simpatico with my values, my beliefs, and the way that I wanted to serve my clients. Because if I know, say for instance, if I had somebody come to me and say, I want to start a podcast or I want to start a coaching business, I would send them to you, Candy. If they wanted to start a podcast or a coaching business, they wanted to start a podcast, I would send them to Michelle, or I would send them to you, Michelle Braden, Abraham. Or Braden Ricketts. They are the two people. They're the Amplify You group that actually, I think Candy and I both started our podcast with them. So there are these coaches that have these very specific avenues or niches, whatever you want to say, and recognizing that you don't have to do everything for everybody, and that a good referral is the same as having a good experience with a client. Because if I can send a client to Candy and that client goes, wow, that was a fantastic referral. That looks good on me as well as on the other coach. So I think that whole networking, the way to do
Mm-hmm.
networking right would have been important.
Yeah, and I agree with you there because networking when you have a career is very different than networking when you have a business. And for me, the thing that if I had done one thing different, it would have been knowing that I needed to learn how to sell and that selling can be done with integrity and with service, and that I'm not doing something to somebody, that this is a partnership. Like we're trying to decide together, is this a partnership that we want to enter into? And
Right.
so I think for me, selling would have been one of the big things. So, like, hopefully that helps some of the listeners as well when they're thinking, gosh, maybe I'd like to be a coach. Okay, well, now here's a couple of things that can help you avoid my mistake. Like, don't
Yeah.
think that somehow people are going to fall in your lap just because you said you're a coach, right?
Yeah. And that's, that selling piece, I think that's really difficult. I think it's really difficult for anybody that has not been in a sales oriented position before. So I was in school systems. I was in, women's shelters. I was in mediation services, nothing where I ever had to sell myself. And you have to market yourself. If you're not comfortable kind of being able to speak about yourself as a coach, and if you're one of those people that finds that uncomfortable, which I did for a long time, you're not going to be coming across authentically to your clients. They're going to be sensing that you're holding something back and you're uncomfortable with them and they're uncomfortable with you. And it just
Oh,
doesn't.
and it's just all the uncomfortable, right?
All the icky stuff about sales.
Yeah.
Anything else that you can think of, Candy, that's kind of a myth that people
Mm.
have about coaching?
Yeah, I think that there is a place where if they think if they were a really great employee in their role, that somehow that's going to mean that they're a successful entrepreneur as well. Being an entrepreneur is super different than being an employee. And a lot of the things that you get rewarded for when you're within that role, like you get a performance evaluation that says, oh, you're doing a great job. And, like you get the award that says, oh, you handled that situation so well. And, people look out for you and so put you forward for a promotion. It's so different. Like the deliverables and the requirements are so different than when you're self-employed. And so self-employed, that piece is like, I need to know who I am and what I can do and who I help and what I help them with.
Right.
Like just that basic stuff. And then to stay in your lane. So back to your idea about networking. Like if I know who I am and what I do and how I can help you, now I've got the start of a message that I can say. That is I'm going to get rewarded by getting hired by amazing clients or organizations and then doing great work with them. It's very different than make sure you fill in, you do everything in your job description.
Right.
So we've got a whole different level of a measurement there.
And I'm just going to throw this out too. A lot of people say, well, I would love to be self-employed because I can set my own hours. I can work when I want. That might work for some. That's not going to work for coaching because you are going to, yes, you can set your hours, but if you're not going to be flexible and say I'm Eastern time and my clients are Pacific time and I cut my calendar off at 3:00 in the afternoon, well, that's like noon their time, right? So how is this all going to work? And I would say for the first couple of years, and Candy, this may be something you coach your clients not to do, but I'm going to say for the first couple of years, I was probably putting in somewhere between an 80 to a 90 plus hour week. And there's no such thing as weekends. I work when my clients need me. So, but that's my choice now. And I don't do that kind of work now. But when I started, that's what it was like.
And I did the same thing. Now, I know that there's a lot of people who may want to start their business while they're still doing their day job, or they're still, having a lot of responsibilities at home. And so how can you start a business and deal with all the other responsibilities in your life? So I think that it's quite possible to start a good business, like to make a real good solid start on about 15 to 20 hours a week. So that means one day on the weekend and a couple of evenings. That's how you're going to find your time. you need to be really intentional about what you're doing. Like from sounds like you did something similar to me. I was like, yes, we're going to do this thing. I'm just going to do whatever it takes and I'm just going to go all in. But not everybody can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're already working a 50-hour work week and have kids at home and all these other things, maybe you can only find a smaller amount of time. And that's okay. As long as you're really intentional and you know what you need to get done, you know what you want to do consistently. And it always starts with talking to people about coaching, inviting them to be your client, and working with your clients. That's your focus to start out with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to throw one in here is to avoid the shiny object syndrome. And for those of you that don't know what this is like that you've seen those ads on Facebook, become a coach for $49 and, or become a coach and make six figures in 3 months. The only people that are getting rich are the people selling those programs. Do not, because they're just a bunch of old hashed up stuff that you could probably get on the internet anywhere for free anyhow. But exactly. You bounce from idea to idea. Somebody says, oh, you should do a webinar. Oh, you should do a podcast. Oh, you should do a live event. And it just gets like a snowball effect. And pretty soon you're just overwhelmed with all these new ideas and things you think you need to do.
Exactly. So not only do you think you need to do all those things, but what often happens is, like, for example, with a podcast, you've had your podcast for a long time, as have I. We don't do 10 episodes and then go, oh, that didn't work, and then change. And so that's what often happens with shiny object syndrome is we're looking for the easy path. And so what we do is we jump in and we do one thing for a little while. And then when we don't get fast and easy results, we think there's something wrong with what we're doing or something wrong with us. Then we change. But what we actually are doing is delaying the success. How many episodes have you got on your show right now? What kind of number of episodes?
I think 150.
Yeah, right.
When we're recording this one. Yeah.
Right. And so, I'm at about 225 right now. So the first 10 episodes, I was just getting my feet wet. Mm-hmm. Like when I decided to do a podcast, it was like, okay, I'm going to stay with this at least for 100 episodes because you need to get your skill. You need to wait to build momentum. And if I went, oh, I'm going to have a podcast. Oh, no, I'm going to go do a YouTube channel. All I've done is just introduce delay in receiving the reward of doing that project. So just kind of adding on to the shiny object syndrome there. There's nothing wrong with you. Every way works. Find the way that works for you. That's the way I think it should be.
And I think we've kind of painted this really bleak picture of the coaching industry. But I want to say, like, this all came around because I want people to understand that coaching can be a very rewarding. I love my job. I would not do anything else but this. But divorce coaching. But one thing I can say is that like Candy just said, you have to be committed to getting through the icky stuff and all the stuff you have to do and getting that business model set up and getting that marketing under control. But if you can get through that, you then have the ability to set your schedule and ask the higher price for your coaching programs and pick and choose what you want to do. And that's the nice thing about coaching. You can do it from anywhere. I was lucky enough to be on a cruise earlier this year, and I was able to work with 3 clients sitting on the deck of a boat in the Bahamas. Like, that was nice. Now, that's the one and only time I've done this. It's not like I do that all the time.
Listen, I did that in September. I was on a cruise and I worked, I think it was 2 days a week. I saw some clients. But so I agree. I don't want people to think that this is like, oh my gosh, it's so hard and it makes it like, why even bother? What we have done is we've talked about these are the myths and these are the mistakes that we've seen people make. And they're common mistakes. But what I haven't said is that within the first week, you could have a client. And if you've got a paying client, that time with your client when you're a coach is some of the most rewarding time of your life, right? Yeah. Like to watch somebody grow, to have that connection with them and to help them through whatever that next level of their transformation or the challenges in their life. We're talking about the logistics, but in the meantime, while you're doing some of those other things in the idea of, I want to create a business, like a strong business that's going to be there, you're already working with tons of amazing people. The kind of people that when you get off a call, you're like, oh, that was so great. Like that is happening all along the way as well.
And you know what I've got to say, and we're just about out of time, but I have to say this. So I've worked in I was a teacher for years, and that's pretty much a female dominated industry. Not, statistically, I would say coaching, other than you're looking at like the Tony Robbins and a couple of others, Bob Proctor and a few of those other people that you can think of, it's probably going to be mostly females. And I have to say that for the most part, I have found most of the female coaches that I've run into at events, at networking things, are very supportive of others. They are willing to help out. They're willing to spend a little time and get on a call with you to help you out if you want to develop your business. And it is a great business. I think it's a great business, like you said, if you want to continue your full-time work and just get started in this, and then build up your client base. And then when you're ready to retire or transition out of corporate to entrepreneur, you're walking into your business. It's already 2 or 3 years down the line, and you're into that kind of the golden era of your business where you're not dealing with all the messy, icky stuff of it.
Yeah. And that a lot of that, the business building stuff is quite creative. So for people who love the idea of learning how to write better, or, maybe trying podcasting or something like that, like that's quite satisfying to master a new skill and to have that personal growth and that personal development. So that goes along with it too.
And the more that technology advances, and I'm not even talking about AI, but the more that technology advances, the easier it is. You don't have to have a big team. You don't have to hire a lot of people. Candy, you basically do your podcast. I basically do my podcast. And so, it's not that hard to manage this stuff. And there's lots of people out there to help you. Like I said, that's the cool part.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wish we could talk a little bit more about this, because I really do think that, women looking at creative ideas for second incomes or transitioning from one job to another, or from a job into full or partial retirement, this is a nice option if interacting with people and helping people and supporting people is kind of your jam. It really is a nice option. Candy, with all of the stuff we've covered, what do you think is the one thing you'd like people to remember?
Yeah, I think I want them to remember that if they decide to do something like coaching, that it is a profession. So get some training, and then find your first client as soon as possible, because now you've got that balance, right? Like you're learning the skills, but you're also having the fun of the interaction with your client. You do that, and that's the place to start. And then you're going to know whether this is something that you really want to go deep on, or if it's just something that's kind of, an in-between step for you. Yeah. That's what I would recommend. Yeah.
I love that. I was at a coaching meeting the other day, and somebody said, how they say you'll never forget your first kiss? She goes, as a coach, you'll never forget your first paying client.
Exactly.
I thought that was kind of funny. Candy, if people want to reach out and find out more about what you do, or maybe get in touch with you and say, hey, I'm an aspiring coach, I'd like to learn more, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so there's two best ways. The first is listen to my show, She Coaches Coaches. It is the podcast. It's on all the players, so super easy to find. And the second is you can check out my website, which is stepintosuccessnow.com. Lots of great resources on there. And so those are the two places that I hang out.
Great. And as you can see, Candy is so fun. She's so approachable, and she has a wealth of knowledge about getting started in this coaching industry or building your business bigger. Thank you so much, Candy. I really appreciate all your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I want to thank you for listening into the D-Shift podcast. And don't forget to tune in for our next episode. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.